I called my parents for help. When they heard my voice, they hung up. What happened next in the ER was unimaginable. You could hear the panic in my voice as I dialed the number I'd called 1,000,000 times before. This wasn't just a regular call for a ride home from school or a quick question about dinner. No, this was different. I was in real trouble, and I needed my parents more than ever. But when I heard my mom's voice on the other end of the line, I never expected what came next. They hung up. But before we continue, please subscribe and turn on the notification bell for updates. I had never felt so vulnerable. My body felt like it was betraying me. For weeks, I'd been feeling off, dizzy, lightheaded, like I could fall over at any moment, but I thought it was just stress. School, the pressure, the never-ending assignments. But then, it got worse. One night, as I sat on my bed trying to catch my breath after another dizzy spell, everything went blurry. My heart started racing uncontrollably, and for the first time, I truly felt scared. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't stop shaking. This wasn't just a headache or anxiety anymore. I thought I might actually pass out. I needed someone. Anyone. So, I did what anyone would do. I called my mom. The phone rang, and I felt a tiny bit of hope, thinking she would answer and talk me through it. Maybe it wasn't serious. Maybe I was just overreacting. But when she picked up and heard how badly I was struggling, she paused. And then, she hung up. What just happened? Was that a mistake? Did I hear her wrong? I stared at my phone in disbelief. I called back. No answer. My heart sank. I couldn't understand it. Why would she hang up? Was she too busy to care? Did she think I was being dramatic? All I knew in that moment was that I was terrified, alone, and desperate. My chest tightened. I needed someone to help me, but I couldn't get anyone on the phone. I called my dad, thinking maybe he would be different. He didn't pick up. I wasn't sure what I was expecting. Maybe I thought they would rush to my side. Maybe I thought I would hear that comforting voice on the other end telling me that everything would be okay. But no, there was nothing. But the worst part? This wasn't just about my health. This was about everything that had been happening between us for months. Things had been strained with my parents. Ever since the fight earlier this year, it felt like there was a wall between us. They barely even looked up when I tried to talk to them. We'd argued about everything, my grades, my future, my attitude. It felt like no matter what I did, nothing was good enough. But now, when I needed them the most, they hung up on me. And I realized something. That wall had turned into a prison, and I was trapped. As they rushed me into the ER, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was seriously wrong. But nothing could have prepared me for the moment the doctor walked in and said, "We might lose you." The sound of the sirens was the only thing that kept me grounded as I lay on the stretcher. My breath was shallow, my heart pounding faster with each passing second. The ambulance crew didn't speak much, but I could tell by the way they moved, rushed, focused, that this was more than just a routine case. I couldn't believe how quickly everything had escalated. A few hours ago, I was just feeling a little dizzy, a little tired. Now, I was being rushed into an emergency room, my life hanging by a thread. My mind kept racing, going over everything that had happened up to this point. But the biggest question still loomed over me. Why had my parents hung up on me? The doctors and nurses were already waiting when the ambulance pulled up to the ER. As I was wheeled in, I felt a strange mix of relief and terror. Finally, people who might actually help me. But at the same time, I couldn't shake the feeling that things were much worse than I realized. They immediately started asking me questions, but I could barely speak. My chest felt like a weight had been placed on it, and my body was shaking uncontrollably. "Do you have any history of heart problems?" one of the nurses asked, her voice sharp, focused. I tried to answer, but the words wouldn't come out. My mind felt foggy, like I was drowning in my own fear. Dr. Hall, a middle-aged doctor with dark eyes that seemed to see right through me, came into the room. He barely said hello before starting to assess my condition. His hands were steady, but there was an edge to his calmness. He wasn't reassuring. He wasn't telling me everything would be okay. As he examined me, I began to piece together what was happening. My heart was racing in a way it shouldn't. My blood pressure was dangerously low. And my symptoms weren't just a minor problem. They were part of something much more severe. Back at home, I had tried to tell my parents about the strange feelings I'd been having, those moments when I felt like I might just collapse. But every time I brought it up, I was brushed off. My mom was always too busy with work, and my dad just told me it was probably stress from school. It wasn't just the physical symptoms that made me feel isolated. It was their dismissal of everything I was going through. I was supposed to be the strong one, the one who had it all together. But inside, I was crumbling. And when they didn't answer the phone that night, it felt like the final straw. Dr. Hall's expression never wavered. He ordered an array of tests, but his eyes told me everything. Something was seriously wrong. I overheard a nurse talking to a colleague. "Her vitals are not looking good. We might need to prep for a procedure soon." What procedure? My chest tightened. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't. I just lay there, helpless, staring up at the fluorescent lights overhead. The longer I lay there, the more I felt the weight of the situation. Why wasn't anyone telling me what was going on? What were they afraid to say? My pulse sped up again, and I couldn't stop myself from shaking. Just before Dr. Hall left the room, he paused. He glanced at me, then said in a voice that barely concealed his concern, "We'll do everything we can, but we might lose you." Those words hit me like a ton of bricks. Everything inside me froze. Could this really be happening? But just as I was about to give up, something happened that I never saw coming. And it changed everything. I don't know how long I lay there before they wheeled me into the operating room. It felt like hours, but in reality, it had only been a few minutes. The lights in the hallway above me flickered as I was pushed down the narrow corridor. Every bump of the stretcher made my chest tighten more, and I could barely catch my breath. The nurse by my side tried to reassure me, but her smile seemed forced. I could see the concern in her eyes, and that only made the panic inside me grow stronger. The cold air of the operating room hit me as they moved me onto the table. I tried to focus on something, anything, to distract myself from the fear racing through me. But my mind kept going back to one thing. I was alone. Really, truly alone. As the doctors and nurses prepared for the procedure, I could hear muffled voices, the soft click of machines, the quiet hum of medical equipment. It all seemed so distant, as though I was submerged underwater. Then Dr. Hall appeared beside me again. His face was tight, but there was a glimmer of something in his eyes. Was it empathy? Fear? I couldn't tell. He leaned in closer, his voice soft but urgent. "Sophia, we need to act fast. Your heart is not stabilizing like we thought it would. If we don't perform this surgery, the situation will continue to worsen. There's no guarantee you'll make it." My heart pounded even harder in my chest. I wanted to ask more questions, to beg him for clarity, but the words wouldn't come. My vision blurred, and I fought to keep my eyes open. Was I really about to undergo surgery? Could I really trust these strangers to save me? But more than that, where were my parents? I had reached out to them again and again, but they hadn't even bothered to respond. In that moment, it became clear that it wasn't just my health on the line. It was the bond I shared with my family. And right now, that bond felt like it was unraveling in the worst possible way. Just as they began prepping for surgery, I heard a familiar sound, the vibration of my phone against the edge of the bed. I turned my head, startled. It was a text message from my mom. She had finally reached out. I couldn't help the flicker of hope that surged through me. Maybe she had realized what had happened and was finally showing concern. But when I glanced down at the screen, my heart sank. The message was short, cold, and utterly detached. "Are you okay? Call me when you can." The words stung. Was that it? After everything I'd gone through, after calling for help multiple times and being ignored, this was all I got? My mind raced. Was it too late to care? Was she really too busy to understand what was happening to me? I wanted to cry, to throw my phone across the room, but instead, I took a shaky breath. I needed to focus on staying alive. But it was hard to forget that I had been left alone when I needed them the most. The doctor continued to prepare me for the surgery, but it felt like everything was happening in slow motion. The weight of my situation pressed down on me, and I couldn't escape the thought that if I didn't make it through this, no one would even care. They wheeled me into the operating room, and the bright lights above me seemed blinding. I could hear the surgeons speaking softly, but everything felt so distant. I closed my eyes, trying to fight the panic building inside me. But then, I heard something that jolted me upright. The doctor's voice came through the haze, sharp and serious. "We need to act quickly. The longer we wait, the higher the chances she won't make it." Suddenly, the fear that had been gnawing at me before became all-encompassing. I was seconds away from going under the knife, and I still didn't know if I would wake up. But all I could think about now was one thing: my parents. Why weren't they here? Just as the anesthesia began to take effect, I heard Dr. Hall say, "We'll do everything we can. But remember, there's no guarantee." I barely had time to register his words before my vision went black, and everything went silent. As the anesthesia took over, I thought everything was about to end. But when I woke up, I couldn't believe what had happened next. The darkness swallowed me whole. For a while, there was nothing, no light, no sound, just complete and utter silence. I didn't know if I was dreaming or dead. I didn't know if I was still alive or if my heart had finally given out. But then, I woke up. My eyes fluttered open and everything was blurry at first. The sterile white walls of the recovery room came into focus, and I realized I was in the hospital. The beeping sound of heart monitors and the low hum of machines filled my ears. My chest felt tight, but it wasn't as bad as before. I wasn't dead. I was alive. But then, a sense of dread filled me. The doctor had said there was no guarantee. I had survived, but why did it feel like something was missing? Where were my parents? As my mind cleared, the events of the past few hours began to rush back in. I remembered the surgery, the fear, the uncertainty, and the phone call from my mom that had left me feeling so empty. She hadn't come. Neither of them had. Dr. Hall entered the room, his expression a mix of relief and concern. "You're awake. That's a good sign," he said. his voice calm, but with an undercurrent of tension. "The surgery was successful, but we'll need to keep monitoring you closely for a while." He seemed to hesitate, then added, "You were in serious danger, Sophia. If we hadn't acted as quickly as we did, well, things could have gone very differently." I barely heard him. My mind was still caught on the unanswered question. Where was my family? Why had they stayed away? I couldn't hold it in any longer. "Where's my mom?" I asked, my voice hoarse. "Why didn't she come?" Dr. Hall didn't immediately answer. His gaze flickered uncomfortably before he spoke again. "We did everything we could. But I'm afraid your parents, well, they didn't make it to the hospital in time." The words hit me like a slap across the face. They didn't come in time? That wasn't possible. They could have been here. They should have been here. But they weren't. I could feel the sting of their absence now more than ever. My chest tightened, not from the surgery, but from the realization that I was more alone than I had ever been. The walls I'd been fighting to climb over had grown higher, and I didn't know if I could climb them anymore. I blinked, trying to process what he had said. "What do you mean? Why didn't they make it? Wasn't there time?" Dr. Hall didn't answer at first. He looked down, his hands clasped together, as though weighing something. Then he said, "They called in, but by the time they were on their way, the situation was already critical. I'm afraid they didn't understand how serious it was, and by then, you were already in surgery." My heart sank, and I could barely hold back the tears. Was this really happening? Had they really abandoned me when I needed them the most? The reality of what had just happened started to settle in. I had been fighting for my life in the ER, fighting against a rare heart condition that could have ended everything. But despite the odds, I had made it through. The surgery was successful, and I was going to live. But that didn't make the emotional scars disappear. The doctors had done their part, and the medical team had worked tirelessly to save me. But no one could fix the damage that had been done to my relationship with my parents. The emotional toll of being abandoned in my most vulnerable moment was something I couldn't easily forget. The truth hit me like a ton of bricks. They hadn't even made it to the hospital until it was almost too late. When Dr. Hall had explained it, it became clear. My parents hadn't understood how serious things were until it was almost too late. But that didn't make it any easier to accept. Why did it take them so long to realize? Why did they wait until my life was literally on the line to care? It felt like my entire life had been building up to this moment. I'd always tried to be the good daughter, to do everything right, to live up to their expectations. But when I needed them most, they were nowhere to be found. They hadn't even bothered to show up on time when I was lying on that operating table, uncertain if I'd ever wake up. The weight of everything finally hit me all at once. My chest tightened, and tears welled up in my eyes. I had survived, yes, but at what cost? The doctors had given me a second chance at life, but in some ways, I felt more lost than ever. The people I had always counted on had failed me in the most significant way possible. But in that moment, I also realized something important. I was stronger than I had given myself credit for. I had made it through that terrifying night, alone, in the most critical moment of my life. And despite my parents' abandonment, I had survived. That was something I could hold on to. The anger, the frustration, the hurt, it all started to mix into something else. Something that wasn't just about them. It was about me. I wasn't just a victim here. I was a survivor. And that meant I could heal, both physically and emotionally. The consequences of what happened didn't just affect me. After I woke up and recovered, my parents came to visit. But it wasn't the reunion I had imagined. They seemed genuinely apologetic, but their apology didn't take away the sting of their absence during the most critical time in my life. My mother seemed distant and unsure of what to say, while my father's words felt rehearsed, almost as if they knew this was something they had to say, but it didn't feel sincere. I didn't know how to react. Part of me wanted to scream, to tell them how much their absence had hurt me. But I didn't. Instead, I let the silence stretch between us. I knew nothing could erase the pain, not even their apology. The emotional distance between us had grown, and it seemed like we couldn't bridge that gap anymore. No matter how many times they told me they were sorry, it wasn't enough. I realized this wasn't just about the surgery or the immediate recovery. This was about everything that had led up to it. Years of feeling neglected, unseen, and unheard. I made a decision then. I wasn't going to wait for their approval or their validation anymore. I wasn't going to let their indifference define me. I would heal, on my own terms, without needing them to fix things for me. And that's what I did. Over time, I learned to find strength within myself. I focused on my recovery and my future, building a life for myself that was no longer shaped by the fear of rejection or disappointment. But I also made peace with the fact that my relationship with my parents would never be the same. We had a long road ahead of us, but I wasn't waiting for them to decide my worth. In the end, surviving that night, surviving everything that happened, wasn't just about getting through the surgery. It was about reclaiming my life and my strength. And that was something no one could take away from me.